Alright YouTubes, in today's video it's going to be the paint application to a little Audi A1 that came in for a few repairs. So I'm going to be painting front and rear bumper, the near side rear quarter panel, and blend into the near side rear door, the near side front wing and the bonnet. If you want to see the repair stages to this job, go and check that video out. So pretty straightforward paint job on this one. Black's always fairly easy to paint, covers really well, and yeah, not going to run into any issues with laying metallics down and that type of thing. So first thing I'm going to be doing on this job is just getting a coat of wet on wet primer over the bumper and a few breakthroughs. So wet on wet primer I'm using on this job is Mipa 4+1, but the wet on wet mixing ratio, and I do it in this on black jobs because I can use black, and using black as a wet on wet primer reduces the amount of base coat that I'm going to have to use. So I'm applying the wet on wet with my Satajet 1500B with a 1.4 RP setup. It does a really good job for wet on wet primer. I increase the pressure to 2.2 bar. Most jobs I'm around 2 bars, but a little bit higher pressure to get it to lay down a bit flatter. 2.2 bar, and then full fan, full fluid, and just get that wet on wet on there, nice and wet. Get it on like top coat. The wetter it is, the smoother it is. This 4+1, it's not the best wet on wet. You normally find primers that do, you know, sort of, they're a high build primer, but you can use them as a wet on wet primer as well. They're never as good as a designated wet on wet, but like I say, I will use it on black jobs because it's available in black, whereas the F37 that I use is dark grey, which it doesn't make that much of a difference. As the base coat that I use, Mipa water base, it's really good coverage anyway, but yeah, you know, it's a fair amount of base coat, and if I can nick a little bit of, you know, savings here and there, that's what I do. So yeah, it's a good base to have underneath. Having a, you know, a real good ground coat under your base coat really helps with you know how much material you're using. Base coat's one of the most expensive parts of your paint application, so it's always good to try and save little bits here and there. The more, you know, they soon add up, you know, the little savings. So yeah, I always sort of cover bumpers because there's a lot of areas where you're sanding little you know, nooks and crannies. You can sometimes have little bits of scoring. I do everything dry sanding, so yeah, it's good to just get those bumpers covered. There's a few breakthroughs on this job, so you know, you could cover you know, all that job with wet on wet, but I want to sort of keep in, you know, I want to blend on that bonnet along that edge. I want to keep colour away from that edge, and also blend within the wing. So yeah, just go around, do a few breakthroughs, just, you know, put a nice little coat on the breakthroughs, and it's okay doing that. I do find though with you know, blacks are okay, colours like this, sort of colours are a bit more solid, less metallic, but the silvery colours, I do find sometimes if you blow in a little bit of wet on wet primer in certain areas, it can sort of show in the metallic a little bit. So you know, there's a couple of options. You could put some fade out thinner on the edges of it, or give it a little nib beforehand. So just put a little bit of masking over those two panels that were near the bumper that I was priming. My boot's really small, so yeah, to fit those two bumpers in the car, it was a real tight squeeze, and I just didn't want any overspray landing on it, or you know, going in my blending area that may show a bit it probably would just settle on there as dust and tap rag off, but yeah, just as a little precaution, I will cover panels that are close by, and just a little bit to blow in a lot on that edge where, you know, where it's broke through on the edge of that dog leg. So I always go round, check the wet and wet primer for any little nibs that may have landed in it. Not so bad on black, having black base coat on top of it. If you had to flat and polish those nibs at the end in the clear coat, if you did break through them, they're not really going to show up too well. But yeah, I like it to be nice and clean. You know, if you had other colours under there, you've got a risk of when you go to flat and polish it, if you've got any nib in, that you know, that may show through in your clear coat. So yeah, just go around, check everything, and then yeah, good tap rag all over. There's going to be some dusty overspray over there, and like I said, I want to try and blend right on the edge of that bonnet, and obviously blend within this wing. So you can see by that tap rag, there's a fair amount of overspray on that tap rag. Overspray dust that's been collected and sat on the panel just from those little, you know, those little bits that I've blown in. So I always take extra care and attention to make sure I get all that dust off, because I don't want any of that going in, you know, in the next applications of the base coat and the clear coat. So I do spend a long time, you know, making sure that everything's been tapped and blown. I sort of triple check all those types of things to try and get the cleanest job possible, especially in my small booth where I'm up against walls. The floor's pretty dry and dirty. This footage is this is footage from a little while ago now, so my booth's had a bit of maintenance done, and had a clean out, and the walls have been done. But yeah, I have my housekeeping. I have to keep on top of it, you know, with cleanliness, to keep these jobs as clean as possible. You know, I get fairly clean jobs, but I've got to do the same procedures. You know, when I degrease, I blow off with the booth on and keep it running, and I blow off and degrease, and blow while I'm degreasing, and then give the whole vehicle and all the sheeting to blow off, and then do all my tap ragging and blowing as well. It takes time, but I'd rather do that than spend ages flat and polishing and ruining gum finishes. I can't stand ruining a gum finish. If I want my jobs to have a gun factory finish on them, depending on, you know, try and match that finish on the car. And if I've got to start flat and polishing stuff, you know, in big areas, denibbing's okay. You can get away with little small patches of flat and polishing, but that's all I want to be doing on my jobs, is just doing a few nibs. I don't want to be flat in areas where I've got big flat glossy patches. It ruins that factory look, especially on new cars like this. You know, you don't want them to look like they've been painted, and if you flat and polished it looks too good in areas. It looks like it's been painted. You know, the majority of people probably wouldn't notice it, or the customer might not even notice it, but just the way I do it, that's how I want it. I want that gum finish. So I've put one coat base coat on, sort of, it's like a half coat. It's a quick, you know, that didn't use a lot of paint. You can see that's all pretty much covered already. Obviously it was a bit bit lighter, the grey on that bonnet. So I do the same procedure with this. It's really cold weather, so yeah, the booth's at about 22-23 degrees spraying temperature. So I get that 1/2 coat on there, and I don't increase the temperature. I'm not in and out. I try and minimise the amount of time I'm in and out the booth, because it's not a one visit type base coat. You know, it's a normal 2-coat system. So yeah, try and minimise the amount of energy that I use and the amount of times I'm in and out of the booth. Try and make it as efficient as possible. So I can get that dry at 22 degrees. With that A&I hybrid dryer, put it on the medium heat setting, and that will speed up that footage obviously, but it doesn't take that long really to dry that 1/2 coat off. Dries up really quick, and then I do a double coat for the second application. You know, that's all covered anyway now, so I just get that blend area, get that blending done. That's done now there, and then you know, quick double coat, which is sort of 2 medium wet coats, and I'm putting them on. That's covered already, but you need to put the right amount of base coat on really, to make sure that you're filling in all your prepping scratches as well, you know. So yeah, double coat every section that I paint with base coat. I'd go back on myself, so that gives it the double coat. Then you can do it as 2 individual coats and dry them out, but that means going out of the booth, getting the temperature up, drying it, getting the temperature back down, and then applying a second one. So you can do it either way with this system. Mipa sort of don't recommend it, even though this is per data sheet the way I'm doing it. In this country they don't recommend it so much, because people not drying it out properly, so people have issues in this country, especially in body shops near the coast. They seem to be having a few issues with it not drying. This system, this water base is quite different to a lot of other water bases. A lot of them are latex based. This system is pure water, so that water needs drying out. You get better coverage with that type of base coat, with it being a pure water system. It dehydrates easier, but the downside to it is it can still hold a little bit of moisture, so it is really critical with this system to get that base coat completely dehydrated and get all the water out of it. I've had a few issues with it, and I've helped some other body shops that are on this system, that when it gets to the colder, damper winter months, they have issues with killing off clear coat and stuff like that, and it's where it's just not fully dried, so you do have to introduce some good heat and get it blown out, get it dehydrated. But the advantage of this being a pure water system, which a lot of them aren't, they are a lot of them are just latex based, so I'll give you the advantages of this system being pure water. Is the coverage is really good. It goes on looking textured, and it goes on, that's why it doesn't look very smooth when you apply it, so it looks textured, and metallics look really patchy, but when it dries out it is absolutely silky smooth. There's no texture to it at all, so that's another advantage of it being pure water, not latex based. And another advantage is if you have any issues with it, once you've dried it out, it will sand and dust up properly, you know. It won't, the latex based ones, I've used a few, if you've got to do some nibbing in it, it starts rolling up like chewing gum. It's got like a rubbery texture to it and a rubbery coating, so it won't sand. It will initially sand on the top, and then it will just start, your paper would just start scoring, it'll clog up your paper, so it always stays with a bit of a rubbery feel to it, whereas this goes bone dry, and you can just dry sand it, you know, just like normal paint, which is another good advantage of it. So yeah, that's what I like about it. But the only downside I would say to it is it's a bit more critical for drying, probably not as user friendly, not having a booth with it. It'd be okay for small stuff, but it is, you know, you do need that heat and that airflow to get this dry. But yeah, you don't need to overload it. You do have a tendency with it, and I did when I first started using it, to keep adding more, because the finish of it just doesn't look like you've got enough on there. It looks rough and textured, but I ran into issues doing that, applying too much. Once you've got coverage with it, that's it. You're covered with it. It doesn't matter if it looks a bit patchy, and it does look really patchy. The metallics look really patchy when it's wet, but the drop coat completely eradicates that. The drop coat afterwards, the effect coat, it completely gets rid of it. So just ignore that with this system. But like I say, I do prefer it to the latex based ones that I've used in the past. So spray gun I'm using is a Satajet X5500 with a 1.2i HVLP setup, and I'm spraying it at 2 bar with full fan and full fluid. So onto the drop coat now. Metallic blacks don't really require much of a drop coat, but they've got it's got a bit of pearl in there, a little bit of metallic, and you want to get it on there. It corrects the shade, especially on the more metallic colours, and you just do it at 1 bar, 1 bar into all your base coated area and into your blending zone. So you do all your blending on the wet application, and then you're just 1 bar. Doesn't require, this type of colour doesn't require a great deal. And then just increase your distance. Over a large area I'll go full trigger, and then you've got to feather the trigger in your blend areas, so you can see I've just blended at the top of that corner of that bonnet to keep it away from where it's gonna, that top of the wing's gonna meet the door. And just get one drop coat on there, and that will give you the correct colour. You can do 2 drop coats, make sure that first drop coat's dried out. They don't recommend force drying it, let it dry naturally. It looks like it's spat on there at 1 bar, but again, when that dries off, it's completely gone. So on the higher metallic colours, it will look patchy. You put that 1 bar drop coat on there, 9 times out of 10 it's gone. You can't see it, but if you still feel as though it looks a little bit patchy, then you can apply another one. It doesn't make it dusty, or you get any base coat gravel on there. None of that happens with this system. It's completely smooth afterwards, no problem. Little tap rag, you get a little bit of overspray, like base coat dust onto your tap rag, but it comes off and it's completely smooth. And that's another advantage with this base coat, being pure water and being so smooth, is you get 0 pinch back in your clear coat, so you get no dye back in your base coated areas in your clear coat, which is a great advantage. So yeah, it's the winter months, so I'm a stickler for getting my paint the same temperature as my panel. So you looked, the paint was around 22 degrees there, checking the panels there between sort of 25, 27. So I've dried the base coat. How I dry the base coat is I put it on a bake cycle at 45 degrees, go in there with a Satajet air dry 2 blower, that uses less pressure, and all that uses is the warm air in the booth, but it really increases the air volume. So I go in there and blow it out with that air dryer, go over all my base coat. Doesn't take that long once you start getting that heat in the booth, get it all dehydrated and get the temperature down. And then so it's, to me, getting your top coat, if you want that factory looking finish and you want that paint to settle down on there nice, and you don't want to be fighting and wrestling against it, trying to get it to flow out and over thinning it and stuff like that, then matching your paint temperature to your panel temperature, getting it in the right ballpark, is really out. Summer months, you're there anyway, your paint temperature is going to be roughly what your panel is anyway, but winter months it's a bit harder work to achieve the same results, I find. So the clear coat I used on this job was Mipa CC9. You've got an option of thinning it from like no thinners, 0 to 5%. I've never really done any more. I've started at 0 with it when I first started using it, and then worked my way up. Then I was using all the amount of thinners, but now I'm about 3 to 4%, depending on the finish I want to get. And again, depending on the gun that I'm using. So on this job I'm using Satajet 5500, and that's got a 1.20 RP setup on that. So the 1.20 is like a traditional Satajet setup. The eyes, the eye patterns are a bit different. It's a bit more controllable. The O's are wetter in the middle, so it can be a bit of a cannon. I do wind in the fluid control. I do my how I gauge my fluid control is once I can feel resistance on the trigger, it normally means the indicator's at the top, and then I work it out from there. So I wind it in half a turn from full trigger. Like I say, it can go on a bit heavy with this O setup, but I do prefer it. I'm so used to using Satas all my career that the O's more suited for the way I spray, really. So yeah, and I put the first coat on, put that on at 2 bar, and yeah, I'm about 3% thinner with that clear coat. You can do it all on the computer system, so you could be accurate, and then being accurate by not using a stick and not using the measuring on the side of a cup. I can make these little micro adjustments with it, and I can play about with it, and that's what I like doing. I like playing about with it, and I achieve a result, and I think, well, maybe I want that a bit flatter, maybe I want a bit more orange peel in it. So I play about with the finish setting. If I know my paint temperatures at the right temperature, and it's matching my panel temperature all around the low 20s, then I go 3%, and I have the pressure at 2 bar, 2.1 bar. I find if you start over thinning, and the paint's cold, and you're over thinning because the paint's cold, it's going to go on there, and you're going to get a bit of like where it shrivels back in itself, and the stability's gone out of it, and then when it hits that warm panel, and it warms it up, you're getting like overflow with it, and then that finish doesn't look right to me. I don't like it. You're putting it on there a bit thinner, you're trying to get that flatter, so you can walk away from it, come back, and you've overloaded it. So I find with putting a bit less thinner in it, getting the paint temperature right, matching the panel temperature, you're not losing that gloss retention, the finish that you're getting out of that clear coat is going to stay there. I like a decent build. You've got a decent build on your clear coat and a decent amount on there, and the orange peel stays as it is orange peel, and it doesn't fade into itself, it doesn't draw into itself. Then your gloss is better. If you're over thinning it and your paint's cold, and then you've over applied it a little bit, the paint will then shrink back. I call it like the diamond looking effect, where it's almost starting to run. It hasn't run, but it's almost starting to run, and then it sort of pulls into itself, and then the gloss goes, and it's not a nice look, So I find this quite essential, where it is for me anyway, to get them temps. I like that film build to look like a factory film build, and the O does do a good job of that. And also you've obviously got the risk of build up on edges and stuff with cold paint over thinned, so I like to reduce the thinners, increase the pressure a little bit, and get that paint nice and warm. And I'm a bit anal, to be honest with you, and I do overthink it all, and I do get myself in some situations, really, because I'm an overthinker. I'm constantly thinking about the way that paint goes on there. When I get in that booth and I'm painting, I'm I'm fully engrossed with how that paint's coming out of my gun, how it's laying on that panel. I'm fully invested in it. The time absolutely flies by when I'm putting paint on. It always does. I don't know how long I'm painting in there for. The time is just like flying by, because my mind and my concentration is just watching that paint go down. I'm having a whale of a time in there when I'm painting. I do love it. I love putting paint on jobs. I love playing about with it. I love trying to improve it all the time. And sometimes that can be a bit detrimental to me, overthinking it, playing about with it all the time. And I've got to adapt to, the way my setup is, and the way the climate is in this country as well. It's quite difficult to deal with, going through a whole year of the seasons in this country. We've got such a variety of weather here, with humidity, temperatures on a day-to-day basis. So you've got to keep doing it. We've got to keep, in this country, we've got to keep changing and making micro adjustments to your paint and your conditions. We're trying to play God really by controlling the temperatures, but it has to be done over here. I envy people that paint in a country that the temperatures are pretty consistent all year round. It probably makes it a lot easier. You haven't got to keep an eye on your paint, keeping it at the right temperatures and all that. But yeah, it can be quite difficult keeping on top of those type of things. One of my favourite parts of a car to paint is a bonnet. I love putting paint on a bonnet. I love getting it on there, wet, getting that. You get a great gloss off of a bonnet. You get a great orange peel off a bonnet, and I love it, to be honest with you. That's my favourite part of a car to paint. It. I'd be quite happy just painting bonnets on their own all day. Probably because there's less risk of it running on a bonnet, so I can just give it some, give it full bore on a bonnet. But I do get a lot of satisfaction if I get a bonnet clean, cleaner the better. The cleanliness of a bonnet and getting that nice even finish and that even film build over there, and getting that nice and flat. It's really satisfying to me still now. It's really satisfying to me. I really get a kick out of it. Getting a really clean bonnet. And bonnets, they're susceptible for having dirt drop into them. And my booth's pretty clean. At the time I painted this, my booth, I changed all the filters and stuff, but the roof filters are above that bonnet as well, and they were long overdue. So I was at that point. This was probably a couple of months ago now. I painted this. No, probably not that long actually. Probably at the beginning of December I painted this. I get it clean, but then I get a few big rocks, which that can be annoying. But yeah, there's nothing more satisfying than getting a nice wet even finish over a bonnet, nice and clean, and getting a proper decent amount of paint on there, and it looks proper. Bonnet's sort of like a bit of a showpiece panel on a car, so yeah, I always strive to get my bonnets as clean as possible and get that finish looking, as wet and as glossy as possible. There's nothing worse to me, not on customer work and restoration work, but I like it to look out the gun. That's how I doing this type of work that I'm doing, production cars most of the time. I want that, you know, I want my paint finish to look out the gun. That's what I strive for, that out the gun factory looking finish. On my last coat, I always check that panel if I see any areas that may be a little bit dry. It's a bit difficult for me to see from the feature line down, especially you know, in my booth where I'm quite close to the walls. I haven't got any side lighting or anything like that. Yeah, I have to get my eye in, I have to get down and have a look. But I always, before I move on to the next panel, I just check and you know, add a little bit here and there. Sometimes that catches me out and I add too much, and I kick myself because I end up getting some sort of run or it's a little bit overloaded. But yeah, that's my overthinking brain that kicks in again in those situations. But I'm always constantly checking that you know, I want that finish to look even, want it to look even and consistent. But like I say, it's a little bit difficult for me to see on the lower areas. So yeah, I do stop and check and then move on to the next bit. I'm always having a bit of a scrap with the airline, manoeuvring it around the cars. But to be honest with you, now, you know, I'm doing this voiceover at the time I'm putting this video out. That's how I'm doing it at the moment. I'm sort of it takes a bit longer and it will use more energy, but I'm going to try and reduce the amount of stuff that I, you know, get in with the car. If it's going to all be really tight, then I'm going to start painting parts separately, because it does make it difficult for me getting around it all, and I can get around it. You know, one advantage I've got is I'm small, so I can fit in small areas. There's probably one advantage being small, that and getting loads of leg room on a plane. But yeah, I'm going to start painting parts separately instead of trying to cram it all in, just to make my life a little bit easier. You know, there's enough things to be thinking about and, you know, concentrating on, and yeah, it is. I'm finding it a bit, you know, as I'm getting a little bit older as well, twisting and turning in certain places. It's, you know, it's just a little bit more difficult to achieve what I want to achieve. So to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to try and cram less in the booth, really. So yeah, I had to nip out there, just add a little bit more clear coat to what I had. I just didn't think I had quite enough to do that bumper. So I'm going to end it here. I'll leave you to watch the rest of the clear coat going on. Just want to say a massive thanks for everybody that watches my videos and all your comments. It really does mean a lot to me, and I'm not just saying it. It really means a lot to me. I'm so grateful for everyone that watches it, and I hope that you get something out of my videos. And yeah, I'd love to hear, you know, everyone's got their own different ways and their own different situations in this trade, and I love hearing about, you know, other people's ways, and, you know, we're all here to sort of learn together. So thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you again soon. Look after yourselves. Cheers.